modernize land systems, providing secure and transparent solutions worldwide. From U.S. counties to global initiatives, they are transforming property rights and economic growth. Thank you for supporting the progress and empowerment in land governance. Thank you very much. For our next panel, this is going to be a panel on housing and property titling. This panel will explore blockchain's role in property titling and land governance. Panelists include Omar
Bouaichi, who I'm filling in for.
Okay, Omar Bouaichi, who you're filling in for, of Ginnie Mae. Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
I got his email, yes, thank you. Who utilizes blockchain to secure transparent mortgage transactions within HUD. Baltimore City, actually I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourselves, okay? But this is all gonna be on enhancing real estate transparency and compliance. You're on your own now.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you for the Blockchain Association. So the Government Blockchain Association. And
I think you gotta turn it on. It's on red. Yeah, green.
There you go. So again, thank you to the Government Blockchain Association. It's great to be actually in person versus all the meetings we have on Fridays for all the different committees and all, and meeting everybody just definitely adds a different dynamic. I am filling in for Omar Bouaichi today from Ginnie Mae of HUD. Omar runs the Innovation Lab for Ginnie Mae. The Innovation Lab at Ginnie Mae, it looks at introducing or experimenting and uncovering new technology solutions that'll actually improve the Ginnie Mae processes, government processes related to funding and ensuring Ginnie Mae mortgages. This is all part of, again, of the HUD ecosystem where Fannie, Freddie, and Ginnie account for about 90 some odd % of all mortgages go through those organizations. So when we look at efficiencies and we look at digitization, there are better ways to do things, but all of we're going to be talking today about going down to the levels of detail for bureaucracy and legal and identification of that a property actually exists and only exists in one place, which is a great opportunity to discuss the value of blockchain, that the entities that are all related and connected to that also exist and are real and can be found and identified. The payment systems, so Ginnie Mae and these companies also are all MBS companies, so mortgage-backed securities. So the funding of the mortgages so that there's available capital to go and make new mortgages. If everybody doesn't understand that process, when you get your mortgage and it goes to a bank, the bank typically either holds that mortgage and they leverage against that, or they recapitalize it and it's sold into a pool. So when we talk about where is blockchain and digital used and what is the Innovation Lab looking at is how to make that process as trustworthy as possible, as recoverable as possible, and then also how can you make it more efficient so that all the information that's contained in the pools, all the information about the properties, meet all the criteria that are the requirements for government and then for investors. So anybody who, Omar had asked me to invite anybody who has technology innovations to reach out and contact him or contact me, and we can talk about how any initiatives or new and emerging even concepts or actual technologies may benefit that purpose. So I am now done talking about HUD and government, and I'll just go to, so U.S. Housing Digital is me, and we're going to talk, so nothing I say from this point forward will relate to government. Just want to make that very clear. And Omar, if you're listening, I did that. So what we're talking about today and for blockchain and how it connects to property and refer to physical property as well as individual entities is really part of the end state of digital maturity. So my belief is that everything that we touch, everything we see, everything we do is at some state of digital maturity. And that full digital maturity, and this is I think where blockchain or something like blockchain comes into the case for property, is that fully digital means that anything that happens at the property in near real time happens both at the physical property, but also then is represented measurable, observable, and then also programmable. Okay, and programmable in the physical property and digital property at the same time. So if you make a payment, or if the money automatically comes out of your account, one of the things we observed in terms of efficiency is it's actually an anomaly when somebody doesn't make a mortgage payment, typically. So there's a lot of expense in predicting and weighting and processing that data. It's actually much more efficient, and also the types of data that you're using, to go and build a model that says all the payments are going to be made, they're going to be made on time, and only alert the beneficiary and stakeholders when a payment's not made. Now, as you start to think of things as being digitally mature, you start to design things very, very differently. So if you look at why this is a big deal for everyone here, we're talking about a $46 trillion asset in physical properties in the United States. That's a huge, huge number, impacts us all a number of different ways. The other thing is there's about 146 million properties in the United States. So that 146 million properties they have, as Medici would point out, they have physical boundaries that are part of your title. So, you know, when you come out and you stake the properties, and then they have, depending on the state that you're in, you have mineral rights and things that go down below the property. You also have air rights that go above the property. Those are recognized in different places. But if everything becomes fully digital, all of those pieces can be also part of the property, which means in that digital format, I can extract and I can use the value of that to create new financial tools, new ways to go and monetize that and benefit the stakeholders. Whoever's maintaining the property, keeping up the property, owns 90 or 100% of the property, all those different things, all become possible. So when we've been looking at what happens in blockchain for properties, we're actually able now to put in all of the ESG kind of criteria as well, right? So you can actually make sure that you're not having somebody go into a property that is 99% likely to flood. Right, so we've gone through this. The investors want to make sure that that doesn't happen, right, because that detracts from and diminishes the value of that investment that they make. But it also threatens the lives of the people who live there who may be renters. So all these types of things, and when we look at upgrading from a green standpoint or an energy efficiency standpoint, we can actually now connect that smart grid, right, and the connection to energy consumption, security, enhancements and all. We can do that digitally and then actually go and do it physically, and then they'll all be from a smart house, that smart house on the smart grid, and all the dollars, investments, cents, we'll say, like in terms of cooling and heating and water flow and all those types of things, are all now observable and again also programmable at that 100% maturity. So when we're talking about blockchain and housing, we're talking about taking it to that extent. Now, with the panel today, we're going to be getting down into the details on where we are right now in terms of practical applications, what people are really doing. And there's all these layers of, I don't want to say bureaucracy, but there's a number of handoffs that happen. So one of the projects we had was going and looking at the number of contacts, number of companies that are involved in a mortgage. So when you get a mortgage all the way to residency, and it's a minimum of 32 companies. Most of those companies are repeating, capturing, storing that data over and over again. There's a tremendous amount of errors that happen when you go and you do that. Plus, the cost expense is huge. So one of the things I did for U.S. Housing Digital was there's anywhere from 60 billion to about 400 billion transactions per year in this space. That's counting machine to machine, machine to person to machine, all those pieces. We should be able to reduce that in blockchain and being fully digital about 90%. We should be able to also then monetize that. Everybody should still, we're not talking about, again, because we're in DC, we're not talking about people losing jobs. We're talking about raising their game, that all those different stakeholders have access. They don't have the burden of storing and recovering and re-verifying that data, which means everybody in that whole loop benefits. And we're going to be talking today with people who are actually working in this type of environment and driving that forward. So if you go through and introduce yourself, and
Sure.
We'll walk through.
Hello, my name's Alex McGee. I'm a co-founder of Balcony Technology Group. Well, what we do is we help municipalities and counties understand their land records a lot better. Now, what does that mean? In my state, in New Jersey, we are really hamstrung by a broken system. Government technology hasn't changed in 30 to 40 years in my state. We are operating on a siloed system of COBOL export. So what that means, you get a non-human readable file that these people have to sift through to understand answers. So what Balcony does is we provide an asset registry to local governments, to county governments, and we aggregate their legacy systems totally on chain. So we take their export and we understand different variables that we can put to it. A real case study is a lot of municipalities in my state don't have a handle on transfers relative to code enforcement. So in a highly transactional town, you may have half the properties that sell that don't follow the rules and get a CO, a fire cert. And that's a huge, I would say, missing income from these towns, and it's also life and safety. So what we do is we have a real good understanding what these local municipalities want, and we're offering them a blockchain-based solution that's practical and that's usable right now. So we're currently in New Jersey, New York, and in Wyoming. Wyoming is a little bit different. The use case in Wyoming is really around finding bad actors that purchase real estate next to our infrastructure sites. Wyoming is mostly owned by the federal government, and Balcony entered into a partnership with the University of Wyoming to do this just thing. So, my job consists of going around the country, going into different city halls, different capitals, and really understanding their pain points. Government is not hard to crack. You just have to understand the language that they're used to hearing, and you have to really have a practical use case. No one is going to switch to the blockchain because you say so. They're going to switch to the blockchain because you have a real understanding about what their pain points are, and you're fixing them by way of the blockchain. And that's been my experience.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ebony Thompson. I am the city solicitor for Baltimore. That basically just means that I defend the city, the mayor, city council, all of our agencies against any lawsuits that come against the city, which are a lot. I defend the police department as well. We also go on the affirmative, so we also bring cases. We're in the middle of one of the last nationally standing opioid trials. We just finished closing, and I drove from Baltimore, and I'm gonna have to drive back to finish up that case. So we're handling a lot of lawsuits, and with that, it also comes property. Baltimore has a lot of property, and we also handle all of those transfers through the Department of Housing and Community Development. So that is one of my clients, and we know that we've had a huge vacant housing problem in Baltimore City, which has been the source of a lot of blight, crime, and the Mayor Scott has been very adamant about tackling vacant housing. And it was the first day I started that we had, unfortunately, 3 firefighters that were killed trying to fight a vacant fire, and he asked for all solutions to combat vacant housing. And I brought this to him coming from private sector. I'm actually from private law, and then from before that in real estate, and then also in banking, investment banking. I started at UBS. So I bring a lot of financial, real estate, and legal background knowledge to the city. And he was really looking for a real use case, and we talked to him about the possibility of bringing blockchain in order for us to streamline how we fight and combat vacant housing by getting our buyers, people that are interested in buying, to make that process easier. And we searched through multiple companies, and we formed a partnership with Medici Land Governance about 2 years ago. And they're not here, Ali Husseini is not here, but work with me for 2 years, work with the city, literally above and beyond. It was supposed to be a project where we recorded our title deeds just for vacant properties so that we could encourage investment, and also it'd be the launch pad for tokenization, which I believe would be the key to solving the affordable housing crisis. So he worked with us for about 2 years, and we just went live on Monday. Not only did we record all of our vacant properties that are now 13,000, but he exceeded that, and we now have all 228,000 of the city properties recorded, which is just a huge thing. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm just here to talk about the importance of public-private partnerships in order for us to get mass adoption, to get these projects going. Because governments are I can only speak for Baltimore, but they're hesitant to do things a different way. But when you really show them what the value is in it, how it can actually encourage investment, especially when we're going through a huge vacant housing problem, and it's tied to all of these other sources, and now they're able to see that, yes, we can help with permitting, right, where we have a backlog, or people that are fighting over permitting, like if we can streamline that, we're looking at different ways in terms of when people are even redeeming their properties through the tax sale. And we have to find out that someone has redeemed the property, but it wasn't actually recorded. And then I get a lawsuit because the person that redeemed it, it actually ended up getting sold. And now we have to invalidate that deed and go all the way back. And I have to defend the city for that. So there are a lot of pain points that the city, or that any city, I think, that could go through this without utilizing the latest technology and really having them understand the power of that. So not only have I been focused on Baltimore, but actually been going with Medici Land Governance, and they have several municipalities now that they are working with to talk to them about this, about some of these pressure points and how this technology, emergent technology, can really help governments really take it to the next level and streamline things so that, you know, we can maximize our potential and maximize what cities like in terms of collecting taxes and things like that and getting those properties back active. So glad to talk about that project and anything else, but glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So thank you very much. And I'm wearing different hats today. So in this panel, I'm actually, as you alluded to, we're talking about practical implementation of how the technology such as blockchain has been or can be utilized here specifically for land entitling. So again, not myself, but colleagues in the United Nations, specifically UN Habitat, which is a specific entity of the United Nations headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. They have developed a solution. Specifically, they have piloted in Afghanistan for what they called informal human settlement, urban settlement, in order to provide a registry to record title, to map the properties, and to establish ownership, and also to allow and enable for the payments of the taxation that ultimately go to the municipality. So that's basically the contribution that I'm bringing to this panel. Thank you.
And you make a point right there too, what maybe beneath the surface is, so we talked about that the value of U.S. housing is $46 trillion. So that's, as citizens and also homeowners and renters, this is all your property. This actually gets very personal when you get down to it. If you're using like and this idea of observability, which is a little bit more of the Afghanistan area, right, is that you can go and you can chart and you can outline what the property boundaries would be. But observability and also the Medici system going in, even using drones, actually similar technologies you talk about, that can fly over, that observability layer is where we kind of are right now. That programmability in terms of being able to make changes exists kind of spottily in a couple places. Anybody have like a Ring camera on their house where you can hit a button wherever you are and it actually opens up the lock on the door? Well, if you think about that idea of that, again, physical maturity, you can observe what's going on and you can actually change something totally remote, totally disconnected from that physical piece and make something happen, and then somebody can come in. Now, you probably want to have sensors or whatever else to make sure that those are good actors, which is part of the application in Baltimore, is if it's an empty property, is it really an empty property? Right? If you have renters in places that you shouldn't have renters or weren't registered as being renters at either from a government standpoint or from a personal property standpoint, all these things are observable, but are they actable, or can you act on them? And then legally, what can you do? What are your terms? And maybe we can discuss a little bit about the good sides and the bad sides of where it kind of gets fuzzy, right? One of the things you mentioned was when somebody is transferring property, there's a period of time where you're not sure if that person is actually the person who owns that property. Certain bad actors and it's a profession, as you can both attest to, target that, because they know that there's a lag time when you go and you request the title and the file on who the owners are, and you get that information back. You're very vulnerable during that transaction, because legally, and this is all, again, at a municipal, a county, and a state level, there's all different rules, right? But there are people, and this is going to be the issue with everything, AI and otherwise, bad actors are going to navigate through these rules, and people are going to be punished, and people are going to feel pain in the U.S. first, just because somebody's abusing the rules and that lag time. In other countries where property rights are not written into their constitution or not like an inalienable right or whatever, your right to own property is a little bit fuzzy, and depending on who's in office, they can go and they can change laws. So I know some people are having a rough week, but it's a great week to be in the United States, because we may not have all the greatest property laws, but there are property laws, and some of them are antiquated. But if you want to just respond to
Yeah, for sure.
where the benefits are there.
So in New Jersey, for instance, if you were to close a property today, it would take about 3 months for your name to show up on the public registry. So how it works is you close a property with the clerk's office, the clerk records that deed or mortgage, and then they send that information to the county tax board. That county tax board is operating on the same software as the town in which you purchased that property in. And there's a queue of properties that is before yours that tax assessor has to get to. So in that 90-day period, at that time is the most susceptible time for fraud to take place. Secondly, there is no way to lock your deed in most states, right? There is no deed lock product that's available. So all you can do is you can call your title company, and they can make like a flag on your deed to see if there's some fraud there. And thirdly, there is no real estate cop, right? So I had a very personal situation where prior to starting Balcony, I'm a real estate developer, and I was selling a 12-unit apartment building. A gentleman came, wanted to buy the building, didn't come up with a deal, but a week later, I got a call from my title company and says, "Hey, Alex, are you trying to sell this property?" I'm like, "No, I'm not." Turns out that this guy forged my name, forged the whole contract, and tried to run title, and then went back to my building, knowing like how much people were paying, showed a fake document that said, "I'm your new landlord," right? I called the mayor, I called everybody, and they're like, "We don't have a person like designed to protect against that fraud," which is really crazy, you know? So what they did was they directed me to the local PD to make a report, right? And that went nowhere. We talked to a bunch of sheriffs around the state, and a lot of times sheriffs don't have the technological ability to understand what is fraud. Now, being a technology company, my job is not to say that's fraud or not. My job is to notify you on the potential of fraud, right? So we can do this through analytics. Easy way to do this is non-arm's length transactions we're finding is the biggest point of fraud. And what that means is like a developer owns a bunch of properties on that same street, and he sells one property to himself for an inflated value and tries to get a mortgage on that property. That's the biggest instance of fraud that we are finding in New Jersey. And believe it or not, I would say the biggest jurisdiction for fraud is Brooklyn, New York. You know, we speak to Kings County, we speak to a lot of county clerks in the city, and that's just because there really is no way to protect that person prior to this action happening. So it's a symptom of a broken system, but all we're trying to do is notify people faster so they can fight that fraud.
We don't really have the fraud issue. We had ransomware, which was really bad, where they took over our system, and because it was centralized, we had to rebuild, and that crippled us. But that's one of the reasons why we were able to get Baltimore City, the mayor, to adopt this technology and start integrating it into all of our systems, because we know how crippling that is. But just again, from the legal side, just when people are legit redeeming their properties, and when I got to the city and I saw they were still using manila folders like at 3 o'clock and dropping it on the top of a file cabinet, I was like, whoa, we got some issues. So think about it. During COVID, if someone is out for 1-2 weeks, and that's what happened, they didn't file that, and then it went up for auction. It was, you know, the person who purchased it had their contractors ready, they're ready to go. And then this person is like, hey, what are you talking about? I redeemed this property. We have to go back and validate the deed, and now we got to pay damages to the contract to the person that purchased the property, made plans. We're on the hook for that. So a city is going to feel that, right? Just the inefficiencies, not only from the security standpoint in terms of someone actually breaking into our system, but just saving us from ourselves and having a system where we can say, this is where it is. This is, this person paid this at this point. And then just to also bring up the importance of us having these MOUs, these memorandum of understandings with all the people that are really the truth holders of this information. So our circuit courts, so that's how far we went in, right? We went to our circuit courts where if you file a if you file a lien, it's not going to ever get recorded unless you go there first. So that should be a data feed that we are getting. That is now a data feed that we are getting when we're recording all of our properties, so that we have the most accurate and reliable data going into our system. That's more reliable than the system, even though it was electronic. They weren't talking to each other. We also partnered with the Maryland State Archives, where it has to go through them. It all goes through the state in terms of when it gets electronically filed, and then they parse out which county, which city it actually goes to. So we need to have a direct data feed from them. But getting all of these direct data feeds, now we were able to save not only time and money internally, but now that we are going live, we can save the people that are looking to invest in Baltimore, the residents of Baltimore, because we've done the hard work of going into and getting where the data is really coming from and make sure it's reliable, because it really doesn't matter if you record on the blockchain if it's trash data, right? It's just trash data on a blockchain, right? Anybody can put it on a blockchain, but it's the source and the truth of that data and the reliability of it, and that's where we can say we know that this is what it is. And it took us about 2 years, but we did that, and knowing that importance that can save us again from ourselves, and then also from the outsiders. And then fraud, we haven't come across that often, but of course that's something that helps us with that as well.
So to talk about actually to the scenario that you alluded to, although we are in an imperfect situation where, as you said, there are no cops, no authority to enforcing this kind of laws. But I think here is the value proposition of the technology itself and how it can be used. So I pulled out the details of this project that the UN Habitat, in collaboration with the UN Office of Information Communication Technology, developed. So the solution is called Goand Registry. And they define three objectives in terms of deliverables. First, enable survey, mapping, and registration of land and properties in an urban informal settlement that I alluded to. Anchor land occupancy certificate details into a decentralized public blockchain environment. And lastly, allow property owners to independently demonstrate the authenticity of their land titles through open source blockchain verification tools. So I think that, again, although in an imperfect system, I think that technology can provide that kind of support where we can reach the level of independently demonstrate that we have an ownership of an asset. I think speaks like a lot about the ability of the technology to help in these cases.
I agree, and also I think we need more legislation. I think technology and legislation have to go hand in hand. What we're trying to do in my state is institute what we call the notice of settlement. So 60 days prior to you, like either recording a deed or recording a mortgage, you file a disclosure with that county. It happens now on a voluntary basis, but it just sits in some database someplace. So we have it in the mind to notify that town that that property may sell and hard mail that existing property owner. Because all we can do is notify, and if we can notify prior to a transaction, it helps folks that aren't tech savvy to understand that something's being filed on their name or their address. We're just trying to close that loop of information best we can.
Yeah, and you bring that's great. Those three goals, which is nice. Sometimes it's an advantage to be able to create a framework before you have to carry all the baggage that we have from the state, municipal, county levels, and we carry that forward. Now, part on the mortgage, the state of the industry in the United States. I'm also a member of the Mortgage Information Standards Group. So what that means is Fannie, there's a standard mortgage application. So standard mortgage application, even though there's 140 million properties, all that data has a common layout when it goes into a mortgage. All of the legal terms and all the attributes, if we're going to be data people, and again, I know it's a mixed crowd, but all those attributes they're not infinite, they're actually finite. So if you could go and you can digitize them, drop into a model, if you were looking for that perfect AI application right now, it'll go and identify where I can take the state municipal, I can take the different organizations and municipalities and identify and say, across these contracts, where are the terms in conflict? Where does one rule out another one, and then which one actually takes precedence? And I can actually start to design new forms. Now that requires then I have to go and rewrite legislation, plus I need to be able to explain that to everybody that's going to be engaged. But I can simulate that now and then walk into court, walk into administration, as some of the discussions from yesterday, and I can have this use case and say, well, if everything were digitized and not just observable over time, because one of the areas with fraud that you mentioned, Alex, is you're vulnerable during this 3-month period, right? So if all the information changes and is up to date immediately, I de-risk it from an investment standpoint. I protect all the property rights, all the individual rights of everybody that's engaged, and I take out a lot of fluff and a lot of gray areas in that space. Some of this I ended up working on for another advisory client who does the document custodian work. So if you ever wonder, like, where those manila folders go to when you fill out and you sign all those things and it has a deed and the title in there, it's about 100 pages per mortgage. So I was working for a company, and they had a 50 million mortgage manila folders in this one facility. And I said, theoretically, you can all go, wow, that really sounds like a lot. It's really a lot when you see it, because it was an airplane hangar just full of manila folders as far as you can see. And to your point, I was like, this is the 3-month thing. There's like a rule on how quickly you have to be able to go and find that. If somebody has a lien against their property, if somebody's getting a home equity loan, you have to go and find that in this maze. And I said, this is not right. And all the filing systems and bringing that all together was a nightmare. And I thought, again, let's think digitally. If the paper knew where it was, right, and if it moved, then this would all be a lot easier. And you're all going like, well, that doesn't, how would you do that? Well, if you look at the Apple tag or RFID tags, right? So radio frequency identification tags, they're actually small enough that you can actually put them on every folder. So if a folder moves out of a particular row or moves at all, right? To your point, you want to know if somebody's touching whatever represents your property and your ownership. So if that moves and you get an alert on your phone, there's an interesting service there, which could be, why is my file moving? And did it move outside the boundary? So we started looking at those things, and the shortcut to where this all goes is, out of those 100 sheets of paper in each one of those, why can't I go and put each of those individual fields and the data in them in blockchain? So then I don't have to worry about, so we had a very advanced sprinkler system and dehumidification system and huge penalties if anything else happened in that building. And we were so dependent on that folder and somebody finding that folder. And I think you also made a point, when that folder falls over, where somebody drops 5 folders and those pages go over, because there's nothing special about these folders, right? When they go flying all over, who puts what forms that's making, $18 maybe an hour, much less, and they go flying all over, how do they put them all back? They don't. They try, they make it look whatever. So anyway, it all gets better. There's not that much. The data is not infinite. We can digitize this all now. We did come up with a system then to go and monetize, right? How can you actually make it worthwhile that everybody wants to go and do that? If I can pay you to every time I'm updating your record or you're buying property, there's a transaction, let's digitize it. There needs to be some kind of cost and benefit to go in doing that. And then if I can also make you as a stakeholder, make it a publish and subscribe kind of system, that who gets alerted on that? If you want to be alerted that something happened in that property or that documentation, can I get? So we started looking at ways to monetize. So we're looking at any blockchain solutions, I would say go and look at who all the beneficiaries are as stakeholders, monetize that, and then there's this transition period right? You're going to have physical and you're going to have digital for some period of time. You want to minimize that as much as possible, but we're probably talking about 10 years. But while those transactions are going on, take that advantage to go and put it into some type of blockchain, something digital.
And that's an excellent point, Michael, in terms of the monetizing, because that's one of the first pieces that we put on there, especially for residents where they want to be alerted anytime something happens, someone tries to record a lien or a lien is recorded on the deed, and then also the efficiency of being able to see everything that's going on with that property in one location, so that all of the links, once you go there, you will be able to see your water bill, your property tax bill, your everything that has to do with that property. And if you wanted to, you're rehabbing and you're doing a permit, you can hit the permit button from there. You can order expedited permitting, which could be monetized, because now we're able to track that better. So it's also, that was another feature for governments, if there's a way for them to monetize this and then do a revenue share, again, back to public-private partnerships with Medici Land Governance for building this for us and then maintaining it as this is coming in. So as we're doing upgrades and doing more iterations, as we're having the title associations actually give us feedback on it. We've demoed it and we've actually incorporated their feedback where they can create now lien sheets and things like that, title searches, title reports actually from in the portal. And then they can also find out if this was a property that they also ran title on before at any point, and be able to pull that back in. Also restrictive covenants. We're able to go in and see if all of the restricted covenants that were illegal now, right, where certain restrictions, people of color, we can look at those words, and utilizing AI that's built in, we can now just go in and scrub that. So it allows us to do so much, and while it may take a government some time on the front end to do this, it is, if you can show them what all the benefits are, just like you're saying, especially the monetizing portion, and then the alert system, being able to say, this is an aging property. We're trying to fight vacant properties, but we're trying to prevent other ones from coming on. This property hasn't changed hands in 20, 25 years. We'll alert the owner, we'll alert the city, right? And say, hey, is there some type of, will in place? Is there something there? So to prevent this from becoming a vacant property. And these are some of the built-ins that we're able to think about and structure. And as we're promoting this to other municipalities, these are the things that you can suddenly say, hey, this is actually beneficial to me, and it's something that we can actually, monetize, so that we're not having to pay for all of these upgrades. So that's a great point, Michael.
And we're getting to a point. Are there any questions or observations anybody would like to make? Wow, a whole row there. That was nice. It's like bingo. Thank you.
Hi. I'm actually here because of you.
Thank you.
My
Nice
hero.
to meet you.
Nice meeting you, Ms. Thompson. I think the job that you're doing is wonderful. You already created a blueprint. And it is important that other states and municipalities will be able to copy this model. Especially I've done real estate. I know how hard it is, and how, the stuff that you mentioned about property. It is important to have blockchain already integrated. My question is, how do the protection and the safety from these titles to the Medici group or whatever that you're using, what is the security protocol that you're using?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just how we have built this together, right, in terms of which blockchain we're using, and while they can see it as a private layer that's there, and that private layer, even though we're contracted with them, so it's the equivalent of just how you would utilize an outside attorney, right? So that information is shared. But what they did was they built us a system where we don't actually need them. It's a system that it automatically does it as we record in, and that's why getting those data feeds were so important. So that data is coming directly into us. So they've actually built us the system that grabs that data as it's coming in from its point of truth, and it's funneling as we're doing things right now. Like if something is recording and it goes through the circuit court, it goes to us. If it goes to Maryland State Archives, it comes to us. If it has to do with Baltimore City. So that's a great question. But yes, there is a private layer to add, but everyone can see. So it's already encrypted? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hello, my name is Eugene Morozov. I have a question. What if, in addition to what was already described, like having a blockchain-based records about a particular property features, upgradable, including the triggers if anything happens to that property, that proper people are notified. The app also had capability of independent verification of signatures of buyer, seller, banker, insurance agent, government record, and whoever else needs to be involved in a transaction, independent verification, and also simultaneous ability to pay. So once all endorsements are received, the payments to buy property, pay tax, pay the lawyer, pay the agent, were all done simultaneously, all on a public and a reputable blockchain and available immediately. Would that be of any help?
Of course. You just have to walk government along one step at a time, in my opinion. You have to sell them on one use case, get them excited about one use case that is a very simple use case, and you build from there. Like Amazon started off selling books, and look at them today. That's how we view the evolution of the digital maturity within governments. A big part of like local governments is protecting folks. So if you describe your solution to protect like covered persons, so for instance, New Jersey has a law called Daniel's Law that protects police officers, first responders, and judges, and it's supposed to scrub their data from public databases. The issue is that the systems are so siloed that there's one person that's job is to scrub everything, and they can't do it effectively because what if you're a cop and you file for a construction permit and don't tell anybody? Right? So there's all this inflow coming in, but no ability to figure out. So if you start at security automation and then build from there, payments are obviously right on the doorstep. So that's how we are attacking that issue.
We have all of that ready, so you can talk to us.
Okay.
Thank you for, one of my questions was going to be something like the Daniels Law. I'm a member of a board of canvassers, and I recently had threats to my safety for agreeing to certify the upcoming election. And so they're actually in the process of trying to scrub all of my information from property records and voting records and all the business licenses and all the things so that they can protect my home address. So I'm glad that you're thinking about that and working that into this. I'm literally in the process of getting ready to record a property and having problems because how do we protect that? And if we put it in a trust, then the trust shows up, et cetera. Yeah. It's a real issue. But my second, so thank you for answering that. My second question would be, what current processes do you have in law that needed to be adjusted? So as a county commissioner, we recorded the property for our county, and our county recorder is willing to work with me on implementing a blockchain solution. But we have to do it in parallel with the systems that she's currently required to come into compliance with. So what suggestions do you have so that we can at least, dip her toe in this, and what regulations or policies do I need to pass for her to be able to do this?
Take this row.
Oh, well, with Baltimore, having the law department lead this, that was one of the benefits. So being able to legally work through this, but with local government in Baltimore, we have a lot of discretion. And because it was backed by the law department, we were able to move what we needed to move to get it done. But I can't speak for other municipalities, but it wasn't that much that we had to move because we have so much broad discretion. So as soon as the Mayor Scott said that's what we're gonna do, that's what we're gonna do.
To add to that, we ran into a similar issue, and our idea was to work with the legacy systems. So a lot of these legacy systems have a COBOL export, right? So if you understand that export function, you can provide value by keeping the systems in place. And that doesn't require a law being changed. how we are innovating is we are the SaaS provider for these local governments. So just because our system is on the blockchain, by virtue of that, we believe that these properties and these bytecodes and these unstructured pieces of data are on chain also, without changing some sort of law in trend. And we hash it. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, exactly. In that question answer, we have faced with the same thing. That two things. What happens if you say that you're on the private level? So that's why you will be controlled by yourself, not decentralized. That's the first question. That when the people talk about that, how you explain and how will be your growing plan for the blockchain, real blockchain. Secondly, exactly the same, that whenever you using the blockchain with the private, you will have the on-chain and off-chain. So how you protect the on-chain together with the off-chain? Because it's easy to change the off-chain, a little bit technical, but I think that's a real case we face with. How different between you protect the data in on-chain and different with the off-chain? Because that's not related together.
Yeah, for us, we had to show the power of this before you go completely decentralized, because these are governments that have just trying this for the first time, right? Most of them did not even know what a blockchain was. So it took me about 6 months to let them understand that this wasn't crypto and I wasn't trying to give them a token. So that was 6 months, all right? That was my first 6 months. So you see where I was started. But so we're trying to see the power of this, and then as they see the value in it, then you can do that. But we're using systems that can completely be upgraded to that, and we can remove those layers. So, but that's a great question and a concern. Yeah. Yeah, we were talking to Gerard about that. Where are you? You were around here. Okay, yep, there you go. So yeah, we're working with he's working with Medici Land Governance on that as well, especially now that we're live. So we would love to get that.
Yep, and thank you very much for your time. Part of that answer, too, may be a digital twin, government side and private side, but that's a whole other discussion. A white paper on that. But thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This is just a personal request.